world changes soon. Can get a doobie on a plane, but there's Uzis in our schools. Every dude who touched a boob or a booty getting me too. What you expect from the kids who went to Hooters after school? We're all triggered and defensive. We're all racist and we're sexist. We all grew up watching South Park. How are we offended? Now being fat is beautiful. Name a thing that you can't do. Jumping jacks, run a mile, live past 42. Man, it used to be cool to just flip a bird to the system, and now it's trendy to be triggered and pretend you're a victim. It's my race, it's my weight, it's because I'm a Christian. I hate the internet and anyone.
Welcome to the Red Pill Sports Entertainment Show. I am your host, Albert Apache, and as usual, brought to you by Open Source, Self-Defense, Fitness, and Grappling. Okay, guys, so today's show, we're going to talk some about how you get better at jiu-jitsu faster. We're going to stay with that theme for a few shows here, and then we're going to talk a little bit about what's coming up in the world of jiu-jitsu as far as events and competitions, and then we'll wrap it up with some NFL talk since the big game is just around the corner. All right, guys, just please remember, like, subscribe, make a comment down below if you have any questions or you disagree with me. I try to reply to everybody, brother, so check it out. Hope you enjoy the show. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get into today's topic of jiu-jitsu. And we're going to do a whole series, the next maybe 4 or 5 videos. It's going to just be geared towards the beginner and how do you get better at jiu-jitsu faster. Now, I'm going to sound like a broken record, or maybe a better terminology here is I'm going to be like the audio version of a boomerang here. It's going to sound like I'm saying a lot of repeating the same thing over and over again. And the reason for that is that essentially it seems as though people know the answers to a lot of these things, yet it's not what they want to hear. You know, I like to make the analogy like this. Let's say I was a personal trainer that was there to help people lose weight, get into shape, and get healthy. My entire spiel, my entire presentation, let's say I was doing a TED Talk, I could walk up there and say, eat clean, watch what you eat, don't overeat, and get good exercise, limit your alcohol, limit your tobacco or any other drugs, and be done. Yet that's not what people want to hear, right? What people want to hear is all these little nuances and all these little but what about this and what about this? And give me the secret to, and what pill should I take? And should I do supplements? And what techniques, what drills, what else should I do? How should I stretch? What kind of cardio should I do to help me on the mats? And people really want all these other complicated, quote unquote, secrets of how you get better at jiu-jitsu faster. So today we're going to talk about the very fundamental, rudimentary thing that you need to do in order to get better at jiu-jitsu faster. The number one thing is, and I said this a few shows ago, is you need to show up to class, okay? You need to show up to class. Do not stop thinking that you're going to show up to class, once or twice a week, yet you're going to make strides to a black belt as though you are somebody who goes to class twice a day, okay? That it's just not going to happen, okay? It just is what it is. And I know this probably flies in the face of some really big name guys that are out there that push their programs and they talk about how you can make black belt in 4 years or you can make black belt in 3 years. And if you follow my program and learn concepts and this and this and that, okay? But here is the reality. That is not how most people's brain works. That's not how most people are going to approach it. And to be quite honest, psychologically, you need a linear system of learning so that you don't basically crap on yourself, so that you're not crapping on all your own progress, okay? That's the real reason why you need a linear system of how to improve in jiu-jitsu. Because if you don't have that, what happens is psychologically people tend to poo-poo their own progress. All right. So, number one, first and foremost, you need to show up to class. When you show up to class, you must be present in the class. What do I mean by being present in the class? Do not be that guy, okay, or that gal, whatever, that shows up to class. The instructor tells you to drill a technique or tells you to do a specific warm up drill. Clearly, they've set time on the clock, and you do one or two reps, and then you want to talk to your partner about it. Or you want to stop training it and be like, well, I don't really like doing triangles because I don't really feel like I can do a triangle, and I don't know if I'll ever catch a triangle. I think that might be too advanced for me right now. Or, I would never throw up a triangle right now anyway because people would just pass my guard. So I'm not going to do it. That's completely the wrong mindset. Okay? When your instructor sits you down and gives you something to drill, you need to drill it. That's the long and short of what it's going to take to get better faster. I mean, it just is what it is, people. You have to put in the time. You have to put in the mat time. And it is what it is. Okay, next, do not be the guy who runs around and is like, well, but what if? Coach, what if? Coach, what if? But professor, what if? Okay, I don't know what it is when it comes to anything that sounds Eastern in martial arts. And when I say that, I mean, if we're talking kung fu, if we're talking karate, if we're talking taekwondo, if we're talking jiu-jitsu, whether we're talking Japanese or Brazilian, it's got that, kind of Eastern sound to it, the Japanese sounding or Korean sounding, whatever, has that Eastern kind of flair to it. I don't know what it is about Eastern martial arts that always generates this skepticism that's like, okay, but what if the guy did this? Right? Stop being a schmuck. Okay? I never seem to have that question when I'm teaching the very fundamentals, rudimentaries of striking, and I approach it from a boxing standpoint, and I say something like, so we're going to throw a jab. Nobody sits there and says, but coach, but dude, what if? What if the guy slips the punch? What if the guy ducks? Duh. Are you kidding me? Are you really kidding me right now? Would you really go to Teddy Atlas and Freddie Roach and try to argue with them and bring up questions as though the jab is a completely ineffective technique, and because what if, quote unquote, the guy did X, Y, and Z? I mean, don't be a schmuck. Stop being that schmucky guy, okay? The reality is, obviously, there is a counter to every counter. There's a counter to every technique. That's why fighting is such a dynamic art. It's such a dynamic sport. Jiu-jitsu is no different. Of course, there's a counter to the technique. We're not talking about the counter right now. We're not going down that rabbit hole. You must first learn to crawl so that you can walk, so that you can run. Stop trying to run when you can't even stand up. Because essentially that's what you're doing. Okay? You're being a schmuck. So stop being the schmucky guy that asks a zillion what if questions. Even if you think that, but I'm being genuine. I really do want to know. Okay, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you want to know or not. The reality is you're not ready for that. That's like asking, let's say that's like a kid wanting you to explain in mathematical terms the theory of relativity without them even knowing how to add and subtract, How are you mathematically going to write those formulas out and on the board and them understand it if they don't even understand what an addition symbol is, what a multiplication symbol is, what a subtraction symbol is? They're not going to understand it. They're not going to understand it anyway. It's just a waste of time. And similarly, for you to go down these rabbit holes of what if, let's say, for instance, we're working on a scissor sweep. If we're working on the scissor sweep and I'm showing you a couple of ways to do the scissor sweep, one of the worst things you can do as a new student is sit there and be like, but what if, coach, and what if, and what if, and what if? Don't worry about the what if right now. Just learn the scissor sweep right now. We'll deal with the what ifs. Once you're able to actually do the scissor sweep right on somebody who's allowing you to scissor sweep them, then we'll add a little bit of resistance. And then once they're just resistant and kind of stiff, then we'll add them moving to a different counter and how you finish it. And then once you can do that, then we'll start having them actually counter to where you have to go to a different technique. But there's this progression of you have to understand the basic fundamentals and ideas before you even move on. And for most human beings, that's by being a practitioner, right? Even as a child, nobody talked to you for 20 hours a day and told you how to walk. You had to try to stand up, fall down on your butt. Try to stand up, fall down on your butt. What good would it have been for a track coach, for instance, Usain Bolt's track coach, to sit there and tell you all about the proper way to sprint and to be the fastest human being on the planet? What good is that when you can't even stand up? So stop being a schmuck, okay? Stop being the what if guy. You want to get better at jiu-jitsu quickly, stop being the what if guy and practice the technique that's being given to you. Along those same lines, like I said, just with the same as the drilling, now you have to rep that technique every single moment that you're given. If the coach gives you 2 minutes to rep that technique, you rep that technique for the full 2 minutes. You don't do 2 or 3 reps and then go, oh, what's next, coach? Oh, what's next, coach? Oh, I'll rep it for a couple of times and then I'm sitting here bored and I'm going to talk to my buddy about some other malarkey that has nothing to do with the technique. You want to get better at jiu-jitsu faster? Start training like you want to get better at jiu-jitsu faster, okay? So basic 2 so far is come to class, be present in class, and don't be the what if guy, okay? Don't be the what if guy. Just take the technique and rep it, okay? Lastly, to wrap it up for today, okay? To wrap it up just for today, when you show up for class, you are now present. You are repping the technique and you're not being the what if guy, okay? People say this and I don't think they understand what's being said to them, right? People tell you this, but I don't think newbies understand what's being said to them. Check your ego at the door. What that means is stop trying to win every roll at practice. You're not competing when you start to spar, okay? When you're in a sparring class, stop trying to win. Start trying to use your techniques, okay? There's a big difference, and people don't understand this. You know, you can be a 6 foot, 220-pound guy that's rolling against a 5 foot, even 100-pound female who is a purple belt, and you're a brand new white belt, and I can pretty much guarantee if you sell out 100% to just lock down on those hips and not move anywhere, you can maybe pin her to the ground and she doesn't move on you, but you're also not moving anywhere. You're not learning anything. You're trying to quote unquote win the roll. You're trying to not get submitted, and in your mind, that's a win. right? Oh, well, she wasn't able to do that to me. She wasn't able to armbar me. She wasn't. Okay, yes, maybe not. But if that was another 220-pound man, would he have been able to escape from you? Yes, most likely. So, what benefit have you gained in your technique? You've absolutely gained no benefit in your technique. So, stop trying to win every exchange, every roll. Start trying to experiment and use your techniques. It's okay if you meant to hip to the left and instead you hip to the right. Oops, now you're in mount. Well, guess what? Now you get to work on, your mount survival. Okay, I'm going to do my best to survive in mount. That's perfectly fine. Then, you do that. Maybe you get armbarred. Okay, you reset, you go again. But honestly, the biggest problem I see when it comes to rolling, new people rolling, and I was guilty of it myself, was the fact that it seems like everybody's trying to win every roll, every exchange. So stop trying to win every roll. Stop trying to win every exchange. So, in summary, guys, you want to get better at jiu-jitsu faster? Let me break it down. Show up to class. Make sure you're in class. At the very least, if you want to make, let's say your goal is blue belt in a year to 18 months, you need to be in class at least 3 times a week. I would actually say 4 to 5 times a week. You need to be in class. Number 2, when you're in class, you need to be present in class. That means you have to be drilling and doing what was prescribed for you to do. Number 3, do not be the what if guy. Stop worrying about what if this and what if that. Those questions will be answered as you continue to learn. And then when you finally come to sparring class, when you get into sparring class, do not try to win every roll and every exchange. Your goal should be experimenting and implementing the techniques that you've learned. That's what your goal should be. Okay, guys, that's what I got for how do you get better at jiu-jitsu faster for this week. I'm going to try and put together some videos as well as some more tangible things that you can do. Maybe next week we'll do some drilling and things like that that you can add into maybe things that you are already doing, give you some ideas. But that's what we got for that. Okay, hold on. We're going to go into the next segment. So, coming up soon, we're going to have another exciting matchup on the Who's Number One format. We got Nicky Ryan versus Roberto Jimenez. Now, if you don't know who Roberto is and you're a grappler, you probably should open your eyes. If you're even an MMA fan, you probably want to keep your eye on Roberto. I don't think that Roberto is probably going to make a transition into MMA anytime soon. That being said, with the style that he fights, I would not be surprised to see MMA guys start to gravitate towards him and wanting to train with him, wanting to bring him in on camps or wanting to train at his facility. His style is super exciting. He always is looking for the finish, it seems. So it's going to be an exciting matchup. In this particular matchup, I believe the last time I looked, the betting odds had Nicky Ryan, the underdog, in this particular matchup. Nicky Ryan will be stepping up quite a few weight classes. I want to say he competed at heaviest, at featherweight. Roberto, I believe, competes at middleweight or lightweight, somewhere in that neighborhood. 81 kilograms, I think, is the lightest that he's ever competed. And so Nicky Ryan will be stepping up in weight. Roberto will not be the person cutting weight here. Not that weight at this level is as big a deal. I mean, it is a big deal. Weight is always a big deal when you have comparable skill. Um, but, uh, you know, I'm sure Nicky rolls with some really big, heavy, strong guys day to day. His brother, of course, is pretty big, pretty strong. So I'm sure he'll be ready as far as that's concerned. But I find it interesting that, you know, this is going to be the second time that Roberto matches up on this particular venue, the Who's Number One venue, against a DDS member. Last time he was on a card and he took on Craig Jones. Nicky Ryan was also on that card. He fought a pure wrestler, uh, Tony Ramos, I believe. Guy was an NCAA wrestler. I really thought that Tony Ramos was going to bring something more for Nicky, and it was kind of lackluster, right? It was really lackluster. What was interesting to note is both Nicky and Craig finished their fights with heel hooks. Craig Jones, like I said, was taking on Roberto. If you look up Roberto's, you know, record, you'll see that, you know, he has a good number of finishes. I want to say, you know, of all of his finishes, I want to say more, you know, the majority of his wins are by submission, right? I think he only has a handful of decision victories uh, and point victories in total, like combined. I just want to say it's about 5 to 6, maybe. The rest of his wins are by submission, so super exciting. You know, his losses, if you look at his losses, generally speaking, I want to say the majority of his losses uh, are by some type of leg entanglement, leg attack, leg submission. You have to really love a competitor, uh, you know, like Roberto, that is going after guys who are known for being leg lockers. You know, the DDS, you know, they're known for uh, being having that system of hunting legs, right? You know, Danaher has his guys, you know, locked in with their leg locking system, and they understand how to go from attacking the top of the body to the bottom of the body to really throw it off balance. And, you know, if you've had a few submission losses to leg locks, I could understand how a person would want to steer away from people who were known for leg locking, but that doesn't seem to be Roberto's path. You know, it looks like he is embracing where he may need improvement, and he's going wholehearted. He like no fear. So I think this is going to be an awesome matchup. It's coming up. I want to say it comes up on February 26th. So this will be a really cool card. On this same card, I believe Craig Jones will be taking on somebody from the O.s.s gym. Um, Ronaldo Jr., it says here. So that should be a pretty fun card. Hopefully they'll stack it up even more. Generally speaking, these Who's Number One cards on Flow Grappling are pretty good. They have a good number of matches on them, and the matches are generally pretty exciting, or at least pretty imagination capturing, right? So you want to tune in to see what's going to happen. This is a great matchup. Um, I'm going to say that Roberto wins uh, this particular matchup, and I'm not really sure. I know Roberto really, at least in his IBJJF career, if you look him up, you can see he's really great at getting to the back. Would not be surprised if he was able to get to Nikki's back here and choke him out. So I'm going to go Roberto. You guys should check it out. Stick with me. We're going to go through a couple of things, and we're going to just talk about what type of good things are coming up in the world of jiu-jitsu, and hopefully we're getting back into the swing of things, right? So if you haven't heard, you know, Gordon Ryan, he has an ongoing beef, so to speak, with the O.s.s gym, and going back and forth once again with Team O.s.s. Gordon Ryan got into it with what is it, Kanan Duarte, and of course Andre Galvao had to chime in. And essentially, what happened was there was an accusation that Gordon only takes rule sets that favor him. I find this. I don't even understand why people throw this accusation out there, because Gordon once said something, and I went back and I kind of verified to see that he was not exaggerating. Um, and he said something like that he responded to this the very first time it was ever thrown at him with, "That's, ridiculous. I've won in more different rule sets than anybody else." And so it piqued my curiosity, and I started going through his record and looking at what formats, where he was, fighting at, what rule sets he was fighting in. And I'm not going to sit here and say that definitively that is a true statement. What I can say is that Gordon has fought in a number of different rule sets. A number of different rule sets. And, I think what people, I feel like this is what happens in jiu-jitsu, right? Is that you think that the rule set, people start to think that the rule set is all defining, or that one rule set is the true rule set and there is no other rule set and everything else is a bastardized version or whatever. In this case, or in many cases when it comes to Gordon Ryan, I've heard him say many times since, and again, when you become the A side of the card, and let's just be honest, Gordon Ryan is the A side of any grappling card. He's the A side, everybody else is the B side. It just is what it is, at least in the grappling world. Now, if Gordon Ryan were to say take on John Jones or Khabib, or let's see, who's another really big name MMA guy that has good grappling. Okay, let's say he took on Daniel Cormier or, Stipe, right? And they went into a grappling match. You could argue that maybe one of those guys would be the A side over Gordon in the sense that they are going to draw more eyes than Gordon Ryan is. That being said, in the world of jiu-jitsu, in the world of grappling, it's kind of undeniable that Gordon Ryan's name is going to draw more eyes to any kind of card than anybody else in the grappling industry. And, it is what it is. And Gordon Ryan is not my favorite grappler, I'm a Craig Jones guy. I really like Craig Jones. I like his style. I like, the things that he does. So all that being said, when Gordon Ryan, at times will take on people who come towards him and say, yeah, sure, this, that, and the other about rule sets, a lot of times Gordon's response is, okay, I'll fight you under that rule set, and then we'll also fight under this rule set.
And that's when the true colors of people and truly how they feel about rule sets and who really is the person that has to be in their particular rule set comes to the surface. Because a lot of people will then try to weasel out, come up with some kind of excuse as why they will not do a one in one. And having been a huge uh, traditional sports fan, watching a lot of basketball and football, it was always one of my biggest pet peeves, is particularly in the NCAA realm, in the college realm, when colleges would run away from, when the big name colleges would run away from upstart uh, programs and not give them a one and one, even from season to season. You know, I remember years where the Utah Utes, um, BYU, uh, New Mexico, the Lobos, um, UNLV, not necessarily the years that they won the national championship, um, San Diego State, that where they had some really, really athletic, high flying, really good teams, 20 plus win teams back when 20 plus meant something. And, you know, they would want to play, uh, you know, the bigger name schools. They would want to play SEC schools. They would want to play, you know, schools that had some kind of name, something to offer them, some Big East schools, um, and some ACC schools. And these ACC, SEC, Big East schools would not play them a one in one. They would offer things like, oh, well, you come play 3 games here, we'll play 1 game over there. Or you come play 4 games over here and we'll pay, so much money, this, and this, and this. Knowing that by the time they were scheduling those games, that, you know, it would be back to rebuilding for those programs, and it just was extremely frustrating um, as a fan to see that, you know, because you knew exactly what they were doing. They wanted to run around and pretend that they deserved these high rankings without having ever really played anybody. And they got the cush schedules and they got the better seating in the tournaments. And, that's the way it was going to be. And they could always turn back and say, well, we offered to play them. Yeah, under everything that favored you, you know? And that's kind of the way that a lot of people that lay this allegation on Gordon Ryan set it up. They lay the allegation that Gordon Ryan only fights under certain rule sets, that he only fights under rule sets that are favorable to him. And when Gordon agrees that, hey, I'll fight you under, you choose the rule set, we will fight under that rule set, and then we'll fight another match under the rule set I want to fight. And crickets, generally speaking, crickets is the response you get from them, or some kind of excuse making as to why Ryan, once again, it's him and not them. But this should be interesting as we watch, and hopefully this year we will finally get the super fight that everybody has been wanting to get, which is Andre Galvao versus Gordon Ryan. Um, I don't understand why the hesitation. I don't know why this has not been accomplished yet. I don't understand it. It seems kind of like a no-brainer, that these two should be matched up. But, we'll see if somebody, some promotion can get it done. All right, let's go ahead and move on. Let's check it out. So, ADCC. Okay, so officially, first, let's talk about ADCC 2021. So, according to the ADCC website, 2021. The only thing we know about the ADCC is that it will be located in the US of A, that the city and the venue have yet to be decided. Now, this is according to ADCC. Now, according to Bloody Elbow, rumors have it that ADCC 2021 is set for Las Vegas. This would be awesome. Vegas ADCC, I think, would draw a ton of people to Vegas. I think that it offers so many positives. You got great grapplers that train out of Vegas. Of course, we know that the California scene is amazing. And of course, you have, Arizona is starting to produce some really good grapplers as well. And then, not that people don't travel, they all travel, but, I think it's going to be a fun time. It would be amazing to have ADCC in Las Vegas, get some really great matchups. And, it seems like we got, about another 6 months for some of the restrictions and things of that nature due to COVID to be lifted in order for, everything to be able to go smoothly, for the competitors to be able to come in that may be traveling from around the world with less, shall we say, hassles or restriction. So hopefully things go off smoothly, and I, for one, think that ADCC in Las Vegas would be extremely fun and something I'm looking forward to. And then lastly, let's really touch on it and talk about what's going on in the IBJJF. I think that this is super telling. So you go over to the IBJJF calendar, and here you can see you got January. You can click on that and it takes you to January and to February, and there's nothing. And there is absolutely no events until March. So Dallas will be hosting the IBJJF Jiu-Jitsu and Gi and No Gi championships. It looks like March 6th through the 7th. And then it looks like Orlando will be doing their own Orlando International Open, right? Jiu-Jitsu championships, No Gi championships. So it looks like we got about 2 different events going on in March, one in Dallas, one in Orlando. I don't know what else to say, guys. This is quite telling. After that, nothing scheduled in April, nothing scheduled in May, nothing scheduled in June, July, August, September, October, November, December. And so effectively right now, guys, all that IBJJF has scheduled for the entire competition year so far is essentially 2 events in March, one in Dallas and one in Orlando. Could we see the rise of some smaller tournaments and smaller promotions start to overtake IBJJF? I mean, this has to be devastating for the IBJJF that they are not able to hold the number of competitions that they're used to holding, right? I mean, generally speaking, IBJJF is probably holding a competition per month at least, if not 2, that are fairly big across the world. And right now, it doesn't seem that they can get the venues, or they can get the go-ahead, or that they can work within the restrictions of certain areas. Seems that Dallas being in Texas and Orlando being in Florida are two of the few places that they can get a venue and get a workable solution, and that they can work with the local authorities to make sure that they're following procedures, and that will allow them to have tournaments there. So it really makes one start to wonder if the IBJJF may lose some of its luster, if you will, if this lockdown, if these restrictions continue on. Because how do you justify charging people, $75, $100, 175, whatever it is, to be a registered IBJJF athlete, yet you're offering absolutely no tournaments in order to build your name or in order to compete? How do you justify that? You're not bringing talent into the town that I live in, per se. Let's say if I lived in a bigger city, maybe I'm an IBJJF, registered person just because I like to go to the events and just because I like to go to different things. Maybe, it brings in people into my town, things of that nature. But that's not what's happening here. Two events, and they're essentially trying to break them out into two separate events to make it into a total of 4. I mean, but if you look at the dates, March 6th through March 7th, and you look at the actual venue and city, right? NY Tech Sports Center, North Richlands Hills. Both of them at the same location, same venue, same dates, right? This is essentially one event. So essentially you have only 2 events scheduled for the whole year for IBJJF right now, as of today. And we are, just starting out into February. So this is some disturbing news for IBJJF. On the one hand, it could be really good for jiu-jitsu, and on the other hand, it could really hurt jiu-jitsu. I mean, you cannot, no matter how you feel about IBJJF rules, I know there are a lot of memes, and I know there are a lot of jokes about how IBJJF is a sanctioning body to essentially promote a specific jiu-jitsu lineage. But the reality is that when a promotion as big as IBJJF is hurt, you can expect that there will be some growing pains that are felt in the entire jiu-jitsu community. It will not just affect the IBJJF. So it is a bit troublesome that all we're seeing on their calendar is 2 events for all of 2021. Okay, guys, that's what I got for jiu-jitsu. We're going to go ahead and move on to a couple other topics, some fun stuff, since we are coming into the big game coming up this Sunday. We'll talk a little bit about that, but we got some other things to talk about too, so hold on. Okay, well, let's go ahead and get into it. Let's start off with one of the big stories that's circulating about the NFL right now, and that is Deshaun Watson trying to push for a trade out of Houston. Now, there's been some potential talk of where, Deshaun may end up. That being said, with the Matt Stafford trade that just happened, that kind of now limits places that most likely Deshaun Watson is going to end up. Now, here's my thing. The NFL had better watch its 6 very, very closely here. In particular, the owners. I've always been a proponent of the players, and I've always said that the players have every right to sit out, um, and not play if they don't have a contract, because their contracts are non-guaranteed contracts, very different from the NBA and Major League Baseball. If they don't play, they don't get paid. They can get traded. They have almost no say about certain things. If you get hurt, you get injured, and we cut you, goodbye to your multi-million-dollar contract, right? So in the NFL, what's most important is for the player, from the player side, is the guaranteed money that they get up front, and that they're paid heavily on the front end, not so much on the back end of their contract. So, a lot of contracts are structured so that they get the most amount of money that first year or two after signing their contract, and then the amount of money they receive diminishes over the next few years. This is also why in the NFL, players seek to get contracts signed with 2 years remaining on their current contract, and they're seeking that a little bit sooner. Okay, so I wanted to preface what I'm about to say with all of that. That I understand those things, and I definitely believe that, players, particularly in the NFL, you know, they have a gripe when they sit out for the money given their career. Now, all that being said, the fact that Deshaun Watson wants to sit out, and if in fact what he is putting out into the public, which is that, essentially they weren't woke enough for him, that the Houston Texans didn't come talk to him and get his input on, GM, on a head coach, that they're not talking to him about big ideas and, big decisions, and that they're not involving him. Well, NFL owners really need to watch their six, and they really need to take a hard look at what's going on with the NBA. I mean, here's the facts of the matter. If you're a small market NBA team, you're absolutely been getting crushed. Crushed. Okay? If you're not the Los Angeles Lakers, and I used to say, or the Boston Celtics, but you can't even really say that anymore. Pretty much, it's the Los Angeles Lakers. The Los Angeles Lakers are essentially, the Yankees of basketball. So that the Laker name itself will sell regardless. But besides the Los Angeles Lakers, if you do not have a superstar team, one of these super teams, you're having a hard time putting together a quality product that can compete, that's going to generate the same name recognition, the same ad revenue, all the things that, the NBA needs, that an NBA franchise needs to happen in order to be, sustainable. You're still paying the same type of wages, but you're not getting close to the same amount of marketing. And all of this has come from two things. Number one is the fact that these players' contracts are guaranteed. And number two, the fact that these owners have allowed these players to essentially, they have become the GMs and the head coaches of their own teams. And I'm sorry, it's a product that I stopped watching way before the whole woke BLM messaging and before the major dip in ratings that just occurred, transpired, I had stopped watching before this. And, mostly because the game had become so soft. I get it. Basketball is supposed to be a non contact sport anyway. Um, but it's become so soft. It essentially has taken uh, the post player out of the game, whether we're talking, you know, the small post player who, played up high at the top of the key, or we're talking the low post player, that, played down in the blocks. It took that game completely away. It's really made the game quite boring. I mean, I really feel like the game is super boring. Um, don't get me wrong, I get it. 3-point shots, it's all fun, it's all this and that. Um, but there is absolutely zero physicality that goes on in the games now. I mean, yeah, and it used to be at the NBA level, those guys were tough. I don't see that. That's just not what I see in the NBA game right now. You don't see a whole lot of toughness. The fact that these guys will take weeks off, nights off, and not play, but they're still getting paid, and they're dictating where they're going to play, and they're dictating with whom they're going to play, and they're dictating who their coach is going to be. It's just outrageous. And so I think this should be a warning shot for NFL owners that if you allow Deshaun Watson to essentially say, hey, I'm the quarterback, and let's be real, okay? Let's be honest about the situation. NFL player compared to NBA player, even one like the quarterback, career length much shorter. Impact can have on a franchise very big, disproportionately big for a quarterback. What did they say in the NFL? If you miss on a quarterback, it could set your franchise back 5 to 10 years. So if you allow a quarterback to start dictating who's his coach, who's his GM, what players come, what players go, that's not to say that you don't get the input from the player. Okay? But I would be very cautious, and particularly if this quarterback is making it sound like this is about a race issue rather than a credentials issue. Because you notice, from what I've read of what Deshaun Watson said, this did not sound like it was some kind of issue where he did not think that, the guy being brought in for GM was qualified. That wasn't his issue. Issue was, well, how come, what about, did we interview a black guy? What does that have to do with anything? If your quarterback is interested in winning, your quarterback just wants the best GM, the best evaluator of talent, because that's what you need. Is you need talent around you. Doesn't matter if the guy is purple, right? I mean, that's just the long and short of it. So NFL, be very cautious. I would say NFL owners, watch your six. Take a good look at what's going on in the NBA. Now, the NBA owners, they're trying to hold a nice, they're trying to hold a nice poker face here. But the reality is they're hurting. If you compare their ratings year to year, from this year to last year, from last year to the year before, their ratings are hurting bad. And the long and the short of it is this: Joe Sixpack does not want to be lectured to by multi-million. Some are getting close now to $1 billion athlete, okay, that has their superstar shoe manufactured overseas in China with slave labor, lecturing Joe Sixpack on how he has to be more inclusive and tolerant, and he has to be more caring about the little guy. And oh, by the way, if your skin isn't the tone that I think it should be, you're a racist just based on that. Joe Sixpack doesn't want to hear that, man. You know, it's time for athletes to remember their role. What their role is and what they get paid for is not for their political opinions, right? They get paid to entertain. Essentially, they're entertainers. And, you know, NFL owners, you better be real careful because you guys did have a little bit of a dip. It did come after you, too. The whole people stop, you know, not wanting to watch the product. I think that you have Brady and Mahomes may save the NFL's Super Bowl ratings this year. Okay? I really believe that. It's a very compelling story. That being said, NFL, do not throw it away pandering to these young athletes. That, let's just be real. Can we be honest about these young athletes and their political opinions for 1 second? They don't even know what the hell they're talking about. 99% of them have no idea what they're talking about because they don't pay attention to politics. They can't tell you why they think anything based on principle, based on concept, based on philosophy. They can't. They're telling you what they think they should be saying because that's the popular thing and that's what they got from hip hop music and that's what their favorite hip hop artists and this and this and this say. And, oh well, these people say this, so I'm going to repeat it. Reality is that their whole life they've been so immersed in their sport that they have no idea what goes on outside of their sport. If we're going to be frank, that's the reality of it. Okay, guys, let's go ahead and move on. So, other interesting things that went on, we talked about it just a little bit, were the Matthew Stafford trade. Matthew Stafford for Jared Goff. I kind of really liked this particular article because it goes through and it talks about the winners. Winner is Matthew Stafford. I'll tell you what I think. Matthew Stafford definitely won in this trade. Getting out of Detroit, you know, there's been a few coaches, GMs in and out of Detroit since I've been a kid, trying to change the culture there. It seems to be a very, very hard thing to do. It seems that no matter who you bring in, this kind of Eeyore kind of mentality just persists. You know, Matthew Stafford with the Los Angeles Rams, I think it's a good fit for him to get out of there. He's got a young offensive coach now, a head coach that's big on, you know, high-flying type offense, should take advantage of his big arm. You know, he's got some really talented wide receivers. Should be a good time for Matthew Stafford. Losers, Jared Goff. Absolutely agree with this. I absolutely agree that Jared Goff got the short end of the stick. Here's the long and short of it, guys. If I'm the Rams, there's no way, looking at the details of this trade, that I make this trade. I mean, if it was Jared Goff straight up for Matthew Stafford, yeah, I make the trade. If it's Jared Goff and maybe a second round pick next year, maybe I make the trade. Jared Goff, 2 first rounds, and I believe it's a second round for Matthew Stafford. I just think that that's ridiculous. Which brings us to winner here. They have the Lions feature. I absolutely disagree. Who looks at giving up 2 first round picks, a former first round pick, and a second round pick, and somehow the future, you know, the futures for the Lions is bright, super bright. But the Rams, for the Rams, it makes absolutely no sense. Here they have the losers, the 49ers. No, absolutely not. The losers here is the Los Angeles Rams. The Los Angeles Rams gave up way too much way too much for a quarterback who, I'm not going to say that Matthew Stafford's old because he's not old, but he has some years on him. Okay? You're not getting a brand new out of the box. This is not a Patrick Mahomes. Okay? You're not getting a 2-3 season, Patrick Mahomes. That's not what you're getting here. Okay? The talent level between Jared Goff and Matthew Stafford, their effectiveness that we've seen thus far in their career, okay, has not been leaps and bounds different that it should justify what the Rams gave up. It just shouldn't. What this tells me is that the Rams are in a win now. Sean McVay is in a win now mode. They're in desperation mode. That's what that shows me. If I am an NFC West team, for my own sake and for the sake of my future, I am game planning to beat the Rams, because if somehow my number one priority next year is to beat the Rams, because I can then cripple them for the next 5 seasons. Because most likely, if this blows up in the face of the Rams, if they don't come out and run the table in the NFC West, how is this anything other than a failure? If they are not one of the most prolific offenses, like top 3 prolific offenses in the league, how is this not a failure? You can't sell this to me as not a failure if they don't come up and put up 30 to 37 points a game on average. Right? I mean, you can't sell me that this was a worthwhile trade. They gave up way too much. Losers, the 49ers, again, I disagree with this, the premise of this argument here, because I don't understand the idea of wanting to get rid of Jimmy Garoppolo. The guy is a very good quarterback. You cannot say great yet, but you can say that he's very good, very effective. You cannot blame him for the shortcomings of his coach. Okay? In the Super Bowl loss to the Chiefs, a couple of things stand out that really bother me that nobody seems to call out in that Super Bowl loss. And I'm a Cowboy fan. Okay? But I can be honest and I can tell you what I saw as a Cowboy fan. Number one, Shanahan had absolutely no answer when they got behind. When they got behind, he still came out in the same sets, running the same dink and dunk little tiny run plays that he had the entire game. He had no contingency for what if in the 2-minute drill we need a touchdown. He had absolutely no contingency plan for that. What if we're down 10 points and we need a touchdown and a field goal? He had no contingency plan for that. And after having 2 weeks to prepare, that's inexcusable. Shanahan set Garoppolo up for failure by not putting in the type of game plan and the type of offensive formations that would stretch the field in order for them to go down and get the points they needed at the end. That's the first thing that stuck out to me. The second thing that stuck out to me is now he's moved on and everybody thinks he's the greatest thing since sliced bread, and I don't know why. Is I watched the 49er defense and Robert Saleh absolutely melt down as a defense and as a defensive coordinator, melt down and give away a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter with like 3 minutes left? 3 minutes and some change left. You gave away a 10-point lead, but you're this amazing defensive coordinating genius. Give me a break. Give me a break. He made bad calls. He put his defense in bad positions. He did not do his job. That game should have never been on Garoppolo's shoulders in the final minutes. They were winning that game in the fourth quarter with 3 minutes and some change left. There is no way they should have lost that game. And then, of course, the winner of the NFL. Yes, this will make for a lot of good, talking and storylines when the NFL season picks up next year. And so, let's go ahead and move on. Let's talk about the last couple of things we got. So, Dak and the Cowboys. Well, looks like the Cowboys are looking to retool. There are a number of free agents that they have coming up that need to be re-signed besides Dak. Here is a list. If we're going to be honest, again, I'm a Cowboy fan. I say this as being a Cowboy fan. This just makes it that much more evident that you cannot pay Dak what he's asking for. If you pay Dak what he's asking for, there is no way you hold on to all of the players that you need to hold on to from this list. And that's just the long and short of it. Now, with the injury, I think Dak even has to lose a little bit of money off of that contract and off of that offer, because we have no idea of knowing if he's going to be the same or not. We just have no idea. And they're going to have to see him in a game to know that. And they won't know that until, after they sign. So really can't give him that kind of money. I would love to see Andy Dalton come back. Tyrone Crawford I'd love to see back. Awuzie I think was coming along. Sean Lee, I feel, is one of the guys that we could see leave, and he did a great job filling in when he had to, but let's just face it, Sean Lee, we've paid him a lot of money as Cowboys. Cowboys have paid him a lot of money to sit on the bench for a lot of games, so probably time to walk away on Sean Lee. But anyhow, guys, that's what I got for the NFL. We'll talk a little bit more about the Super Bowl. Maybe Friday we'll put out a little morsel and we'll talk about the Super Bowl matchup. And that's what we got. Let's go ahead and move on to the next segment.
Sorry, my friends, I did not realize what the time was. So there will not be another segment. We will be wrapping it up. So thank you for joining me for the Red Pill Sports Entertainment Show. Remember, please like and subscribe. Comment down below if you disagree with me or you just want to say something. I try to reply to everybody, man. So that's all we got. So until next time, remember, be practical, be purposeful, get fit with a purpose, guys.
It's my race, it's my weight, it's because I'm a Christian. I hate the internet and anyone who has an opinion. And everybody angry if you say white. Okay, fine. Pass me the brush and I'll paint my face to the shades right. Let's talk about abortion. Sorry, tell me how this works. Bacteria is life on Mars, but a heartbeat isn't life on Earth? Weird. You're so stupid.